Hi friends, if you are new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Bria. If you're not new here, thank you so much for coming back. One thing I feel like I've gotten asked a lot over the last 2 years is, was your MBA worth it? So I want to talk about my MBA journey, what my time at Columbia was like, and if it is actually worth it. Spoiler alert, if you don't want to watch the whole video, I honestly think that the answer is that it depends based on what it is that you want to accomplish and what it is that you want to do with your career. But I think that maybe you can take some tidbits from my MBA journey to figure out how to best tackle going after your MBA, get some application tips, get some studying tips, and take what it is that you want to from it. I guess I'll kind of start from the beginning. So I got my undergrad degree from Ohio State. I majored in business and specialized in marketing there. But after I left Ohio State, I actually didn't go into a marketing role. I went to a tech company called Salesforce. They specialize in CRM. I didn't know anything about software, about tech, anything like that. I never even really pictured myself in tech. I'll be honest with y'all, maybe because college was just a lot for me. I feel like I was just on autopilot during college a lot up until it was time to start looking for jobs, and I was like, I have no clue like what myself pictured in any of these roles. Like I wasn't particularly working toward a goal of getting hired, even though that's like the whole purpose of being in college. I was just like trying to do well in school, and it had never hit me like, hey, you need to picture yourself in a role. So I hadn't done that for real. I got this offer from Salesforce to be a solution engineer. Some companies call it solutions consultant, but essentially what we're doing is that we are supporting the salespeople to build technical demos for them and really be able to communicate what the technical like limitations and capabilities of a software are, so that the customer knows that they are getting the right product for what it is that they need. So we're kind of like the technical muscle behind the salespeople. They can point to us and be like, yeah, see, our smart tech person says you need it, so you need it. That was my role. I was doing that in Dallas, Texas for small businesses. And I actually really liked that role. That was something where, I was building a lot of demos. I was able to get creative with it. I had a team of like 8 salespeople who I was supporting, and they essentially were looking to me to be able to support them in their sales endeavors. So I felt like I had like a lot of leadership experience from that role. I feel like I was able to really like come into myself as far as like being able to present to CEOs of small businesses and all these different things. So I feel like I learned so much in that role, and I really liked it. Then the pandemic hit. Once the pandemic hit, a lot changed for me, if I'm being honest. We were working remotely during the whole pandemic, and with that came the aspect that there is no on time and off time. You're just always on because you're always home and you're always at your computer. There's no like leaving work type of thing. So I think that the boundary there was definitely getting a little bit blurred, and I think I just got very overwhelmed. I was burnt out. Like, when you're working with salespeople, their goal is to sell. Their role is dependent on how much they can sell, and when you are helping them to sell things, a lot of that pressure falls on you, and I think that it was becoming a lot for me. I also kind of felt like I was getting a little stagnant at some point too. Like, I was working with small businesses, and to be honest, and like not to overgeneralize it, but there's maybe 6 or 7 problems that every small business was coming to us with, and after a while it became, rinse and repeat. I just needed something new to solve, and I decided I was just going to start studying for the GMAT. I knew I wanted to go to business school. When I was getting ready to leave undergrad, I was looking very heavily at a couple 2+2 programs. If you're not familiar, a 2+2 program is where you do 2 years of work and then you're immediately brought into an MBA class. So Harvard had a 2+2 program. Ohio State had a 2+2 program as well. So essentially you graduate, you go get 2 years of work experience, and then you come back to get your MBA, 2 years of work experience, 2 years of your MBA, 2+2. So I was really looking at those heavily. I did not get the GMAT score that I wanted when I actually took the GMAT for that 2+2 program. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not in the cards. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I'm actually really glad I did not apply to the 2+2 program, because things would not have worked out for me in the way that they did if I had. So I started studying for the GMAT in either late April or early May 2020. And I figured I was just going to use the time that I had to not be commuting or to, you know, be working from home and have all this like extra time on my hands. I was going to use that to study. So I studied for the GMAT for about 3 months. I used an online resource called Magoosh. I'll link it below. I didn't use their virtual person-to-person like tutoring. I just used their online lesson plan where they will like tell you, okay, on this day you study this, and on this day you take this practice exam, and on this day you take this quiz. And that really helped me because I was able to like do a checklist every single day and really keep myself on track that way. So I spent about 2 to 3 months studying for the GMAT. I knew that going into this GMAT that I just wanted to like give myself a baseline to work off of and to really just like get some type of score to figure out, okay, where am I? And I would, you know, take it again and then apply the next year, 2022, graduating in 2024. So I took the GMAT the last week of June. I remember it was a week after my birthday because I had to really fight with myself not to study on my birthday. And I want to say it was like the 28th or 29th or something like that. I took the GMAT for the second time at the end of June. And I remember getting that score back and being like, hold on a minute, I think we can maybe work with this. I might not need to take this again. And it was by no means like an excellent score. I hadn't passed 700, which was my ultimate goal. But I think the studying for the GMAT process was so draining that I was just like, we gonna just apply with this and see what works. And that's exactly what I did. I took that GMAT score, I sent them to my schools, which I'll get into in a second as to like how I picked those schools. But after that, I started applying to MBA programs, and it happened a little faster than I was anticipating, but it happened. So once I got my GMAT score back, you have to select schools that you're going to send your GMAT scores to. And I'll be honest with y'all, the only thing that I looked at initially when I started picking my schools was location. I grew up in a very small town, and I know the whole small town feeling. I wanted to go to a big city. That was like my thing. Even like leaving Columbus, Ohio, leaving Illinois when I was growing up, I was like, I'm gonna do the big city thing. So for me, it was looking at the New Yorks, looking at the LAs, the Atlantas, the Phillies. Like I was looking at bigger cities that I could see myself living in and that had candidly a good population of Black people there, because like I said, I grew up in a small town where there weren't many Black people, and I didn't want to experience that again. If I can remember my school list correctly, it was Wharton, Columbia, NYU, UCLA, Georgetown, UNC, Chapel Hill, Emory. I remember I applied to Ross, which did not check the box as far as like big cities, but my dad went to Michigan and I actually really liked Michigan's campus, so that was a really big option for me. And also Michigan's Black community when I was applying was amazing, so that was a really big thing for me. And then I applied to Georgia Tech and Ohio State again. So I think those were all my schools. I applied to 10 schools. I was applying with 3 years of experience, and that was something that I knew they were gonna like pay close attention to. And you know, usually it's like, you know, 4 to 6 years of experience. I knew I was applying kind of early, and I knew it could be like docked against me possibly, and so I wanted to really just cast a wide net and apply and see what happened. So I applied to 10 different schools, which is completely overdoing it. I'll get to what I would change if I could redo this whole process at the end, but I am acknowledging that 10 schools is a little too much and it's not necessary. Once you get your list of schools, go on their website and start pulling the events that they're hosting. These events are going to actually inform you about what the school has to offer. You'll have the opportunity to talk to admissions officers as well as like current students, sometimes alumni. You'll get to talk to people who want to go into the industry that you're going into. It's like a whole curated experience to be able to learn more about the school beyond the website. A lot of schools aren't going to tell you this directly. Like a lot of them will probably like you know, put a little de-emphasis on it, but there are a lot of schools that are looking for you at those events. Like if you submit an application but you've never been to an event before, or you've like never signed up for an informational, they're gonna be like, oh, so you just didn't want to learn more about the school. It's one of those things that just kind of like indicates that, no, I really am interested. I do want to know what the school has to offer, and shows that you are committed to at least pursuing the school. Now let's actually get into the application. My number one tip for the application is to give yourself time. Oh my gosh, give yourself time. I applied to everything round one because, like I said, I knew I was going into this with only 3 years of experience, and I just wanted to like put my best foot forward in literally every aspect of the application process. And for me, that just meant getting it in early. You know, depending on the admission officer that you talk to, I don't think that it particularly matters. Like, they hold a certain number of spots in each, but for me, I just felt a lot better knowing that I was like one of the first applicants, or like in the first wave of applicants per se. Let's talk about the application a little bit more. Number one, fill out everything carefully. There's sometimes 8-9 pages worth of questions, and it can be easy to kind of get some stuff confused or trip stuff up. So make sure that you fill out everything carefully. Have someone like look over your application if you feel comfortable doing that, but really just have someone be like, okay, all of this makes sense, to have a second set of eyes on it. As far as the recommendation, I used my direct manager, as well as I mentioned earlier that I was like managing a sales team. The manager of that sales team also wrote my second recommendation. So I used 2 people that I worked with very closely. I know people who have used like prior managers from prior jobs. I didn't have the experience of not wanting my manager to know that I was applying to business school. He was very supportive of me going to business school, and so I didn't particularly feel like I needed to hide that. But if you don't want your manager to know that you're going to business school, finding someone else that you work with directly in the company is a really good idea, that like you trust and like won't go tell your manager that you're applying, someone from like a past job. I do think that like best case scenario, you're able to use your manager or someone that you work with directly or work under directly. But I understand that's not everyone's situation, so just really think through your options. And like I said, give yourself time to think through those options so that you're not scrambling and rushing to get these recommenders. Your recommenders also need time. Do not spring this on them a week or 2 weeks in advance. Give them some time to actually think about what they want to say about you. It's only going to hurt you, and it's going to annoy them if you give them 1 to 2 weeks worth of advance notice, because they're going to be rushing to give you a recommendation and won't be able to really sit down and think through what it is that they want to say. As far as the essays, my number one tip is to know why your MBA, why the school you're applying to, and why does it make sense for you to get an MBA right now. Those 3 things are going to be things that admissions officers are really looking for, to be able to say, okay, this would make them a value add to this particular program, or it wouldn't. I think that one thing that's also really important, and I actually said this in my last video too, what you write about in your essay as far as like your goals or what you want to work for. You know, if you say I want to work in tech, and then you get to school and you're like, wait, actually I want to do consulting, that's fine. Literally no one's checking for you. Nobody is going to hold you to what you said on your essay. I say that to say, you know, take some of the pressure off of the essay writing. You know, you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to know everything that you're going to do when you get to business school, because the whole purpose of business school is learning and figuring out what you like and changing and evolving. Like, that's totally fine. So do not feel tied to what you write in your essay. It is totally fine if you switch your industry or you decide to do something else when you get to business school. It's fine. Nobody's going to tap you on the shoulder and be like, you said in your essay you were going to do tech and you're trying to do consulting now, you can't recruit. Literally no one cares. Just like I said for the larger application, take a step away and let someone else read it. Let someone else review your essays if you feel comfortable doing so, because when you are staring at all the essays that you are going to be applying to, it can sometimes feel like a lot. So just like take a step back, have someone else look at it, edit it, whether it's like a current student, an alumni, a parent, whoever it is. Just having like a second set of eyes on it can sometimes be very helpful when you just need to like take a step back. My last tip for essays, if you can read through your essay and everywhere that you say, for example, Columbia Business School, you can put Wharton in there and the essay still makes sense, your essay is not specific enough. You need to go back to the drawing board, add specific clubs, add specific students or alum you've spoken to, add specific like initiatives, classes, centers, institutes. Like, use things that are specific to that school. that show why you're excited about that school. Do not overgeneralize your essay. You need to be specific about what it is that actually makes you excited about the school that you're applying to. Finally, for the interviews, I honestly think everything I said for the essays also applies to the interviews. Once you get to the interview process, they see like some type of potential in you. And so I think like the interview process is really to get to know you as a person. It's in no way saying that like if you get an interview you're an automatic shoo-in, because I don't think that that's what that's saying at all. But I do think that like if you get to the interview process, that like on paper they are interested in what it is that you have to say and what you could contribute to the class. So for the interview portion, know your why, your MBA, why the school, why right now. Be specific about the things that you are excited for. One of the pieces of feedback that I got from one of my interviewers, and she didn't say it directly, but like she just asked me the question and she was like, you know, I was a MBA student at one point. It's totally fine to be like, I'm excited to just go have some fun and like leave work for a while and just have some fun and like meet some people and like grow your network. Like it doesn't have to be so like buttoned up, like, oh, I want to learn and like recruit and all these different things. It's okay to be like, you know, I'm interested in these fun clubs. I'm interested in getting to know my classmates and, you know, being able to build a community and just like have a new set of friends for like a couple of years and things like that. All of that is fine. I'm excited to travel. Like all of that is completely fine. And I think it's okay to be authentic and honest with the interviewers about that too. Okay, a couple other things I want to talk about before I end the video. The first is diversity recruiting initiatives. The first two I'll talk about are MLT and Forte. So MLT is a program for Black, Latino, and Native American professionals or even students, but the whole goal of it is to put more diverse professionals out into the business world and to expand our footprint out there. So they host programs and seminars and workshops to really, you know, build people into professionals in the business world. Forte has a very similar mission. Instead of the Black, Native American, Latino lens, they focus on women. My experience with all of these has been a little bit different. I guess I'll just start chronologically. So I did MLT in undergrad, had an absolute amazing coach. I did their program called Career Prep. It's for sophomores in college. We, you know, went to different companies 4 times a year. We would, you know, do seminars and sessions and learn what it is to be professionals and all these different things. It was excellent. I had such a great time in Career Prep. I learned so much. It opened so many doors for me. It's how I got my summer internship between my junior and senior year at Pepsi, and how I got my job at Salesforce as well. So cannot speak more highly about Career Prep. All that being said, I knew about MBA Prep when I started applying for my MBA program, and I won't say like too much on it because I do believe that MLT is a great organization. I believe that it helps people apply for business school, become more prepared to apply for business school. And I am recognizing that when I was applying, we were in the middle of a pandemic and everyone was just all over the place. And unfortunately, I do think that that impacted my MLT experience. Candidly, I applied to MLT MBA Prep and I just didn't hear back. And then one day it hit me like, wait a minute, this thing is supposed to start in like 2 weeks. They hit me back a couple of days before the program was supposed to start and they were like, sorry, we like lost your application, but if you can do all this homework before our first session in 2 days, then you can be admitted, but like otherwise you can't. I remember leaving that call like very irritated and just kind of like frustrated because I really did want to build that community of Black people and like diverse people before I went to business school, and I felt like that opportunity was kind of taken from me. But also at the same time, I like knew I was applying with 3 years of experience, so I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this by myself? So I like was kind of sad about it for a week, and the guy I was dating at the time was like, snap out of it. First of all, like, yes, you have 3 years of experience, but you have like all these other things too. So like get a grip and get to applying. I switched gears and went the Forte on-demand MBA launch route. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, that was like extremely helpful for me. It was on demand, like a bunch of courses, a bunch of like recordings that you could watch that was like, okay, here's step-by-step how you do your resume. Here's step-by-step how you go about like networking through the MBA process. And for me, I'm a type A, I'm a task list checkbox person. So for me, I was able to split up all the recordings. I watched every single recording in that bank. I did, and it was probably overkill, but I did. This program helped me immensely. Like, so much. There was so much that like I just didn't know about, like how your MBA resume might look a little different than your resume that you would apply to a job for before your MBA, and all these different things. It was important to me to really take advantage of that program. I cannot recommend the program enough, and I still recommend people apply to MLT as well. I have friends that have gone to business school after I applied. They went through MLT. They're very close with their class. They have really enjoyed it. I am not going to sit here and say like don't apply to MLT. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. I 100% think that if you're Black, Native American, Latino, you need to apply to this program. Like, they have a lot of resources. They have a community that you are able to integrate yourself into before you go to business school, and it takes a lot of the pressure off of your first day of school. So that would be my recommendation as far as those two diversity programs. I also applied through Consortium. I cannot recommend the Consortium enough. What the Consortium is it's almost like if you remember in undergrad, the Common App. It's almost like a Common App for any school that falls under their Consortium umbrella. So my year, the schools that I applied to, you get max 6 schools. I applied to Ross, UCLA, NYU, Emory, Georgetown, and North Carolina under the Consortium. So you pay one flat fee, and then you're able to use one application for all of those schools. And then each of those schools will ask you 1 or 2 additional essays that you add on to that application, but you don't have to fill out the same address, prior education, all of that every single time you apply. When I applied to business school, Columbia was not a part of the Consortium. They became a part of the Consortium as soon as I started my MBA, so we weren't like qualified to be in the Consortium because we didn't apply through it for Columbia. And then Wharton was not a part of the Consortium as well. So those are my 2 non-Consortium schools outside of Georgia Tech and Ohio State as well. Those were also not part of the Consortium. Ohio State, I had a waived MBA application fee because I went to the school for undergrad. The way that Consortium works is that you submit that application, and then the schools kind of decide if they want to make you a member of the Consortium or also give you a Consortium scholarship. So you can be a member without getting a scholarship. You cannot get a scholarship without being a member of the Consortium. So those are like 2 distinct things. Being a member of the Consortium means that you're able to like go to the seminar that they have in the summer. You're able to like go to their seminars and workshops and things like that. So I ended up getting a full scholarship from University of Michigan Ross, and that automatically made me a member of the Consortium, so I could still like, you know, go to their events and workshops and stuff. Because I picked a non-Consortium school though, I was actually not a part of the Consortium throughout the MBA process. So just be aware that if you do pick a school that's not in the Consortium, you are kind of waiving your rights to be a part of the Consortium class and attend those events and workshops and stuff because you're not at a Consortium school. Let's talk about financial aid, because I know that's been a really big topic of conversation. I'll be honest in saying that I think a lot of it is due to the affirmative action laws that have been passing. Fortunately, I didn't have to, you know, face that when I was applying for schools and things, but it is something that even my friends that have applied to business school have mentioned, like, no, it's actually like really impacting the way that we're applying to schools. So just something to keep in mind, I guess. There are different scholarships that you can get from schools as well as external organizations. So scholarships can be full, they can be partial. There are a lot of different ways that you can cut it. You also can go the student loan route. So I guess my personal story is that I got a full tuition scholarship from Columbia, and then living in New York, I needed student loans. I literally just needed student loans to survive out there because it's expensive out in New York. So if you aren't applying for business schools yet, this is your sign to start saving your money, because you are going to be salary-less for 2 years. So if you can start to like save any money, that's a good way to do that. Me personally, moving to New York, I didn't need my car anymore. So I sold my car and I used that money toward living out in New York, so I could take less student loans out. So it was just something that I was able to really balance. One note, especially for Columbia, I don't know if other schools do this or not, but sometimes your financial aid will come after your acceptance. So when I got accepted to Columbia, I didn't get a note or nothing that was like, here's a dime, like nothing. So in my head, I'd kind of like written it off because I'd already gotten an acceptance from Ross full ride. So up until maybe 2 weeks before I was supposed to commit to Ross, I was going to Ross. Like that was my school that I was going to. And Columbia called me 2 weeks before I was supposed to commit to Ross and was like, hey, just like letting you know you have been awarded a full tuition scholarship. And I remember I was driving in my car. I was leaving Halal Guys in Dallas, Texas. I was driving home in my car and the director of admissions called me and he was like, hey, yeah, just like letting you know you got a full tuition scholarship. I'm on my way to a meeting though, so bye, talk to you later. And I was like, okay. And then literally within like 2 hours, they sent me the paperwork and they were like, yeah, full tuition scholarship, XYZ. I called my mom and I was like, I'm going to Columbia. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that like the financial aspect didn't play a role, because it definitely did. Also, if you don't get financial aid during the application process or, you know, during the offer process, there are different opportunities for you to apply to scholarships while you're in school. For Columbia specifically, in the fall, they sent out an email that was like, hey, you know, if you want like aid or relief, like fill out these applications, XYZ, and we can, you know, have some grants to spend around or whatever. So there are sometimes opportunities during the school year where you'll be able to get a little bit of additional aid. So, you know, you can put your best application forward and still not be offered money. That is not a direct reflection of you or your application in all cases. So, you know, don't particularly take it personally. I know it's disappointing, but it's fine. I didn't get money from Wharton and I really wanted to go there for a while, but it worked out in a different way for me. Last thing before I get into a couple of the Q&As that I was asked in the comments of the last video, if I could do this whole process again, I would have, number one, applied to less schools. Like I said at the beginning, I picked my schools that I was applying to based on location, like where I wanted to live. And in hindsight, that was a waste of time. I knew I wanted to go into some type of tech, media, and entertainment role. All that being said, I don't particularly think that I had any business applying to Georgetown because they are very focused on strategy, consulting, government. Media and entertainment classes, at least when I applied, they weren't really a thing. So it was like being able to narrow some of that down ahead of time would have saved me a lot of time. And once I started like looking at, okay, media, tech, entertainment classwork, it really narrowed down to like Wharton, Columbia, UCLA, NYU. Like that's really what the focus was, because that was where the entertainment work was. I think I could have saved myself a lot of time and stress if I would have, you know, led with, okay, here's what I want to specialize in. Here are the schools that are good for that, instead of just like applying to anything with a good city. Now, I do think that because I had 3 years of experience, I don't think it was particularly wrong to like cast a wide net. But in hindsight, knowing what I know now, if I, you know, were to get in under the same circumstances, I probably stressed myself out a lot more than I needed to. So just keep that in mind when you're selecting your schools that you're applying for. Secondly, if you can, visit your school before you commit. And I was applying during the pandemic, so that wasn't really an option. There were not like campus visits, there were virtual look around. If you have friends at these schools, or if you want to connect with the current MBA and come down for the weekend and see if, you know, y'all can go out to an event together or things like that, it's definitely something that I would recommend, because you can never really get the vibe for a school until you actually experience it for yourself. People say like, you know, is your time at Columbia worth it? I think for me it was. I, you know, pivoted industries from tech to more media tech. I went into a role that I probably wouldn't have been able to get without my MBA. I think that it was definitely worth it for me, and if nothing else, it was a 2-year break. Okay, it was a 2-year break, and I think that that's something that a lot of people leave out or like omit, to be like, oh, it's, you know, you learn so much and it's so valuable. Yes, but it is also a 2-year break from corporate America, and that is invaluable, absolutely invaluable. So I think that my MBA experience was worth it. I went a little bit deeper into some of the things that I would have done differently throughout the MBA journey. In that last video, I'll link it below. But overall, I do think that it was a very valuable experience for me. And I feel like I did learn a lot. I enjoyed my 2 years of rest, and it's something that I do recommend to most people if it makes sense to you. If it does not make sense for you and your career, do not let FOMO bully you into going to school. It's a very expensive, very, very expensive ticket to take on just because you have FOMO. So just make sure it makes sense for you and your career. And if it does, go for it. Okay, someone left a comment and was like, what clubs did you join? Also, did you interact with EMBA, or were they in their own bubbles? So great question. I joined a lot of different clubs. There are different capacities that you join clubs in, as a little bit of a heads up. So you can join clubs as a leadership role. You can join clubs and be like not on leadership, but like fully immersed in it. Or you can also just join clubs and just like go when you want to kind of thing. So me personally, I was in a lot of different clubs. I was in Black Business Student Association. I was in like the marketing club. I was in the sports business club. I was in the wine club. I'm trying to remember. There's so many clubs. I was in the cannabis club at one point. I was in the media club. I was on leadership for the media club and Black Business Student Association. I was in a lot of different clubs, like at least 10 clubs. And obviously I wasn't putting all my time toward each of them, but they were just clubs that I felt were very valuable. I think the overall tip here is that you should pick at least 3 clubs. One is an affinity club, something that you identify with, or just an affinity that you want to get to know more about. One is a professional club. So for me, it was like the tech club or the media club to help you with your actual career. One fun club. For me, that was wine club and a couple other ones. So if you need to pick 3, make those your 3. These clubs do cost, so just keep that in mind. Like, it is a price tag on the clubs, which is how, they're able to put on cool events and stuff like that. So just be aware. And if you need to limit it for financial reasons, let those be your 3 reasons. As far as EMBA, I can only speak to Columbia. So if you're unfamiliar, EMBA is the executive MBA. So these are people who are, in leadership roles at companies, and, during their off times, like I think after work or certain days, they'll come to campus, take a couple classes, and they will still be working full time as they're doing this. Me personally, I never interacted with EMBA. I don't think a lot of people do. Their schedule is different. They're on a different floor. A lot of our schedules did not overlap. They weren't really in a lot of clubs from my experience because they were working full-time jobs. And if they were, they weren't really around too much. So just something to keep in mind. It is a little bit of like a different bubble than the full-time MBA program, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'm sure they have their own community within the EMBA community, but as far as like the larger full-time MBA class, I don't particularly remember seeing much of the EMBA class personally. This second question is about resources I used for the GMAT, essays, as well as why I chose Columbia. Another great question. I mentioned for the GMAT, I used Magoosh, their online program. For the essays, I wrote my essays and then I let my parents take a look at them to help me with like the grammar, the storytelling aspect of it. I think for 2 of my schools, I had become friends with like a couple of current students / alums, and I just like let them look at it too. To give me a couple of edits. And then why I chose Columbia, for me, it was a mix of the big city location aspect I mentioned, as well as the media, tech, entertainment coursework. There wasn't really another school that was offering all those things and giving me money. So that's why I chose Columbia. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I know I yapped for a while about MBA stuff, so I hope you're able to take something from it. If you have questions or anything like that, I'm gonna keep my eye on the comments and I can answer any questions in there. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you for caring. I will see you guys next time. Bye.